Dalwhinnie is said to be the meeting place of the drove roads coming out of Strathspey and those from the northwest Highlands. They combined here to head south to the great cattle markets at Crieff and Falkirk. The rough tracks used by the drovers were transformed into military roads in the 1730s by General George Wade, who held the auspicious title of Commander in Chief of His Majesty's forces, cattles, forts, and barracks in North Britain. And they all drank whiskey and lived happily ever after. Isn't that a wonderful story, boys and girls? All righty. So, I want to thank everyone who's tuning in or watching on the replay. Tonight, I got a special guest, Daniel Whittington from the Wizard Academy and, of course, the Whiskey Vault. And we're going to talk about telling our story of whiskey and talk about the story of the whiskey that we are drinking. Daniel, good to see you again.
Yes, good to be seen, sir.
All righty. So, we do have a few watchers. If I can read the typo, Big Ed and the Rebel 764, something like that. And Kilco Whiskey is in. All righty. So I'm going to pour myself a little something.
Hey, that music intro was amazing. I felt like I'm a guest on the Pirates of the Caribbean.
All righty. So Daniel, so a lot of people know my story of how I got into whiskey. And the funny thing about it is, John Lennon said, I don't know if he came up with the original lyrics, but he said, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Yeah, that's about right.
And so I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this, and life brings down a whole nother path.
Mm-hmm.
And I get into things, I discover things. I pinched my hand in between them. I've never done that before.
Yeah.
What happens while you're doing other things? And it was sometimes good, sometimes bad. And whiskey is one of these things. I had gone to a restaurant with my brother down in San Diego, didn't know anything about wine, read a wine list. I go, oh, I should learn something about wine. Went out to the wine country with a buddy of mine, got the bug. Next thing I know, I'm supposed to be studying, preparing for exams, and my mind is on wine. Really the wine country, the production, and everything else. It just became this new obsession.
Yeah. Yeah, whiskey does that, doesn't it?
So next thing I know, eventually I went back to college, studied winemaking, was going to lend me the Wines for Educational Trust, was going to be the Court of Master Sommeliers, going back to WSET. One of the units for the diploma was on spirits. I had no interest in spirits.
That'll get you.
No interest in spirits. I had a bunch of little samples. Smelled a little sample of a little bottle of Macallan 12-year-old. And next thing I know, my mind, my heart, everything else, it's like I was supposed to be getting married and I met another woman. And then next thing I know, I'm out in Kentucky visiting distilleries. A year later, going to Scotland. Yep. And meantime, I was supposed to be studying, become a master of wine. That was my goal.
Right.
So a lot of people know. You and Rex have built the largest whiskey tuber channel and so forth, but you don't talk so much about your maybe your journey and so forth. How did you get into whiskey? What was your venture into whiskey?
I got into it because my dad drank it, and when I started drinking alcohol, which I never really did the whole underage go to parties and drink or anything like that. I didn't really care. I grew up in bars with my dad playing music. And so like alcohol and the alcohol community had no like weird, mysterious allure to me. It was no big deal. But when all of a sudden I could drink, I would start hanging out with my dad, and he would drink whiskey. I started drinking whiskey, but I almost only ever just did Jameson. That was it, or Bushmills. I just did Irish whiskey. That's all I drank. And I did it. It was so much my go-to because as you travel a lot and you end up playing weird bars, one of the only things you can guarantee that you can get good is either bottled beer or a whiskey neat.
Okay.
Anything else, like if they don't know their cocktails, they can really screw it up. Or if they don't understand taps and good beer selection, they can screw up a tap pour. And so it's like the things that wouldn't fail you were something mass produced and sealed. And then when you ordered it, all they did was put it in a glass and hand it to you. And so that was like my easy, I know what I'm getting, keep it simple, and I need some consistency as I travel. So I always know what Jameson tastes like. I don't need to worry about it. And I've been famous for it.
That's always going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, and Jameson is, no matter where you go, because they did such a good job of that. So I was known for it. As a matter of fact, on an album I released, I have a song called Irish Whiskey. And it's a love song to Irish whiskey. And,
so yeah, people started with Budweiser, and they're still drinking Budweiser, and they never get beyond Budweiser or whatever. But then someone gets into craft. So how did you get beyond Jameson to the rest of the world?
Again, my dad. So my dad somehow stumbled into Longmorn 16. And one day I was visiting and we had Jameson and we hanging. He's like, here, I want you to try this. And he poured me Longmorn 16. And I went, holy crap. This is a whole new ball game. What have I been missing? And then that was itch. I was off and running. And it was like within a couple of years, I was all over the map on whiskey and trying everything and taking notes and writing things down and studying production, and because I just couldn't help it. So yeah, that was only a couple of years before I got to Wizard Academy. And then things escalated.
So I like in that moment, it's like an aha experience, or I heard the hallelujah chorus. Hallelujah, you know.
Yep.
You hear the choir singing.
Click.
Yeah. Like, wow.
Yeah.
So for me, and this is something that we have in common, we're both on the nerdier, geekier side of things. It was 1,000,001 questions.
What? How? Why? What is? Yeah.
How did you get to this? And wait, why is this different than this?
Yeah, with only a few simple ingredients, how can there be so much diversity here?
Absolutely. And but for wine, you know, in Italy alone, there's over 1,500 different varietals.
Yeah.
Overall, worldwide, there's probably, and we're just talking Vitis vinifera, the European.
Well, and it's such a 1-to-1 conversion of like product, fermentation, drink it. Product, fermentation, drink it. And so you have a direct contact to like tiny changes in varietals, completely different wine. But if you're distilling it, in theory, you're stripping most of that out. So now what? And so much of the grain in malt, especially in like Scotland, is one basic strain of barley.
And yet Scotland, and as people might get offended, I think has the most diversity of all the whiskey regions
across the board.
You're talking mostly just barley, but also you have corn, wheat, and rye, you know, for grain whiskeys or your blends. And yet the complexity and the diversity is just absolutely mind-blowing, and the depth of it.
Yeah.
So again, it was never about, you said, you know, you're playing in bars, but it was never about, you know, getting drunk or whatever else. You never had that rebellious, you know, sneaking the stuff out and going to parties and raves or whatever.
No, it was just, it was nice. And I liked the way it tasted. Even Jameson, I still do. I still like Jameson. But my rule when I would play was I would get a double pour of whiskey, and then that would be my drink for the show. And I would just sort of measure my way through the show by this one drink so that by the end of the show, I finished it. And so I drink a one glass for an hour and a half, you know, in between sets, in between songs, taking one tiny little sip and putting it back down. And that sort of like carried on my on-stage persona, but without getting drunk. And then I always timed it so that at the end of the show, my glass was empty. And then somebody would be like, hey, let me get you a drink. And I'd be like, that sounds like a good idea.
So, and another thing, you know, so music in one sense got you into whiskey
Mhm.
because of the venue of
Yeah.
where you're at.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite bands, in fact, I've had similar conversations about music and the parallels and aesthetics between wine and music or whiskey and music.
Yeah.
Is one of my favorite bands is Rush, the
Oh,
Canadian band.
Pert. Yeah.
Talking three good guys. So 4 grains in whiskey, but you're
Yeah.
talking 3 guys in a band
Yep.
that have, I would argue, the more complexity, diversity, and range than a lot of other bands. I was recently watching some old Doobie Brother videos.
Yeah.
I think it was probably because I heard one of their songs used in a commercial.
Right.
Kind of stuck in my head, that earworm. Next thing you know, I'm, watching old Doobie Brother videos. But as I'm watching the videos, it's like they had 2 drummers, like 4 or 5 guitarists.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're chaos.
On the piano, and then they had a keyboard. And I like the songs, it's in my head, and I was listening to it for a while. But I'm like, holy cow, they completely fill a stage with band members.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have, I would argue, the levels of complexity and diversity
Well, it's hard.
Has with only 3 members.
Look, man, that truth works across the board. I mean, a few simple, really well-crafted ingredients, and you have a 5-star restaurant's meal. If you have 30 ingredients, that's called casserole, and it's really hard to get diversity in casserole.
Right? Yeah, or stew.
Yeah, it's like once you have that many things going on, it all starts to bleed all over each other, and you don't get distinct variety and differences the same way.
And everything in whiskey that makes those differences, we have this rather than that. Our still goes this way rather than that way. It bends this way rather than that way. The proportion and the size of the base of it going up to the neck, and how quickly it funnels, or how tall, how wide.
Yeah.
I've got a video coming up when I'm talking about Dalwhinnie Distillery and Worm Tubs versus Shell and Tube.
Yeah, and they're one of the few.
A little difference,
Yeah.
So now there are a lot of beverages out there. I know you drink tea and coffee and whatever else. And I like, I still drink wine, but wine does not grab my attention. It's a little bit of been there, done that.
Right.
And exploring the world of wine. So why do you think whiskey then is sort of grabbed your attention, hold your attention, and sort of drives you to go deeper into it rather than just sort of a surface level of it, and to geek out and nerd out about it,
I have never thought about that question. I don't know how to answer that, because it is true that, like, I mean, if you go to a wine shop, the diversity of bottles and styles and flavors, it's pretty incredible. So it's not like it's a one-note band that just hits the same note all the time. There's unending, overwhelming levels of complexities and varieties. But is it really just come down to taste? Like, I don't prefer the way wine tastes compared to the way whiskey tastes, the way that some people like dark chocolate and some people like milk chocolate. I don't know. I think there's something about the struggle of high proof, and struggle is the wrong word, but like it meets you, right? It cuts through things, and it steps up. Like you step up to a glass, and it steps up to a glass, and
it has that confrontation to it.
Yeah, and something about my personality, I love that. I love that this thing in the glass, it meets me there. And wine always feels like it's so delicate and so soft and so malleable in environment and glass shape, and that it's like I have to be so careful with it. And sometimes you like that, like sometimes you like to eat off of fine china and hold your pinky in the air, but I just like that I can just pour a glass, and I don't know, there's something about it.
I think one of the things is, for me anyway, I never think about wine on its own.
Mm-hmm.
It's a companion to food.
Yeah, I could see that.
So it enhances food and it complements food. I was at a business dinner the other night, and someone else was picking up the bill. So, and I was doing the ordering, which was kind of nice.
Nice.
So I got this really nice salmon. It had this very light barbecue glaze.
Mm.
It wasn't overwhelming the salmon. It wasn't like Texas barbecue where it's just
right.
And ordered a real Bennett. It's from the Willamette Valley. Bennett Valley. I can't remember. Pinot Noir from Willamette Valley up in Oregon. Perfect pairing. Just absolutely fantastic. But one of the things I said was, and I was talking about wine and whiskey to people in the meeting, is I never have salmon on its own. It doesn't appeal to me. I've been at business breakfasts where they're not serving any wine, and I'm like, and they've got the capers, and I'm like, you know what? I gotta have some Pinot to go with it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah,
now,
it's like there's meals are that way too.
Whiskey, preferably, yeah, you can pair it with things, but this is a standalone.
Yeah,
this is a standalone.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I love when I'm in the mood. I love using food to crack open and explore what happens to a whiskey, but that's the skinny end of the bell curve. Like that's the outlier.
Right.
Yeah.
And it could be, I'm personally, in terms of food pairings, I'm more towards either chocolate or cheese.
Mm-hmm.
To go to
anything with heavy oils or heavy that like sort of hold on to the fats in the whiskey.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of whiskey, so I've been sipping a little bit.
Yeah. Me too.
So what I have in my glass, tell people what we got in the glass. I opened up there reading a little bit about Dalwhinnie. This is I can hold it up
a little
here.
higher. There we go. Yeah.
There we go. Lizzie's Dram. So, and the story behind this is Elizabeth Stewart. She's very much, and I think this month is Women's History Month.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fitting with that. But Elizabeth Stewart, her brother and I believe her father worked at Dalwhinnie.
Okay.
She started working at Dalwhinnie. I don't have the facts written in front of me. I think it was 1987. She retired at the age, I think it was 57. So she worked away. She worked in the warehouse, but she was really the first sort of woman distiller in Scotland. And so after so many years, she retired, and this was a bottle. This is bottled at, and this is bourbon cask and sherry cask, bottled at 48% alcohol by volume. So really, and Dalwhinnie is sort of like that in that they have a lot of more women in terms of in management, not just people working but in management and so forth.
Right.
But the funny thing about this is, I visited Dalwhinnie Distillery and was not planning on it. It was not on.
It's not on a beaten path. Where? How do you stumble on the Dalwhinnie?
So, kind of like how I said, my journey, you make choices of where you're going to go. I set an itinerary in my life, but other things come along the way.
Yeah.
I was actually on my way. I was up in Dornoch, which is way up in the northeastern corner near, my brain just went blank. In Wick, northeastern.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Just south of Wick.
Right.
So I'm heading back to Glasgow. I'm going to meet up with Roy Aquavite.
Okay.
And I'm about 3 hours into my drive. I've been on the road. I stop, take a break. Oh, there's a distillery. Now, Dalwhinnie, in its location, if you go to Speyside, there's 50 or some odd distilleries in the area.
Signs everywhere.
Yeah, they tend to put themselves where there's water sources, wells. They have various wells. Or on Islay, they put themselves where you could have access to the ocean.
Right.
So all the distilleries on Islay, with exception of Kilchoman, are right next to the ocean.
Right.
And in Speyside, all the distilleries are typically either like Pulteney near the ocean or near a water source. But here's a distillery around the corner up the hill. There's another one, and then there's another one.
Yep.
And there's another one.
It's like Napa Valley.
Yeah, Dalwhinnie is in this high plain
Mm-hmm.
in Scotland. It's got distant mountains or hills, and it's very, very, very flat. And there's no other distilleries around it.
Yep.
And so, as I was reading there in the book, basically it was sort of a crossroads. And if you're there, you could see. In fact, I was there in June 2018.
You can see both.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a valley.
A little bit of snow in the crevice in the hills, but you can tell the water is going to come down, and it's going to go into this flat part and go back a couple hundred years when people are traveling north and south out in the middle of on this flatlands in the high plains. They got to go where the water is. You got to water your horses.
Yeah,
you got to water your mules, and so this becomes an ideal place to make a distillery because of the water source.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop at this distillery. I'll do a tour and so forth, look around. Now my mindset in visiting the distillery is I always want to shoot videos and stuff because I'm gonna get home and I'm gonna make a video about the distillery, talk about the so forth. So I get a little ticket. I have a big camera hanging around my neck. I'm gonna go do a tour, and they tell me, "Oh, I'm sorry, you can't take pictures." And I'm like, "Dude, it didn't say that anywhere. It didn't say it on the ticket. The people at the counter saw me with a camera. Why didn't they say you can't take pictures?" I'm like, "Oh well, you know what? I'm gonna get back on the road. I'll go buy a bottle or something.
Yeah,
get back on the road." You know, I did. How many times things are a disappointment turn out to be a blessing?
Right.
The benefit. So I go back to the tasting room. On my ticket, go to turn in the ticket, and who's standing there at the counter? She wasn't there to sign autographs. She was just popping in to say hello.
Ah, nice.
Elizabeth was there. Elizabeth Stewart was there.
That's awesome.
But she'd already retired. She was just popping in to say hello, and she was going to leave. So I was able to meet her, and
there you go. I can see that.
I'm not going to see it.
Yeah, you can see it.
I was able to get an autograph.
That's cool.
From her and meet her and talk to her a little bit,
which you would have missed if you'd gone on the tour.
Absolutely, because we would have finished the tour, and she would have been.
And as you know, all those tours are almost identical.
Yeah, and I had gone to. That was my 20th distillery.
Yeah,
trip.
They all say the same words, sometimes the same phrases in the same order.
Yeah. Oh, and what kind of mill do they use?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The Porteous mill. And and the reason why they went out of business is because they made it so effective that.
Yeah, exactly.
They went out of business. They never needed repair. And now today, there's only 2 people that do the repair. You know that.
Yeah, exactly. And along with all the other distilleries. Well, I drove past Dalwhinnie twice when I was there this summer, and oh, hey, there it is. But we never stopped.
Okay. So, I like the whiskey. It's sort of as a distillery, it's out in the middle of nowhere and sort of in the middle and almost halfway between. It could be in Speyside. It could be in Highlands. The whiskey I think is right down the middle on everything.
Yeah, I
middle
agree.
Sherry, middle bourbon, middle. So
little mulchy, little earthy.
Yeah. The main thing I want to do is I would like to line up. These are all whiskeys made with the worm tub. These are all made with shell tube.
That's cool.
And I figure out what the difference is.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. All the other variables. Yeah, but that's cool though. That's a very fun, nerdy idea.
And I might need someone to say, "Hey, notice this little note right here. You know how this is like this, but this is like this. That little distinction in there.
There's your worm tub.
There's your worm. There's your worm tub.
That's interesting.
So what do you got in your glass?
I am, speaking of women in whiskey, I am drinking the Balcones lineage that was almost entirely blended by Emma Crandall, blender at Balcones. So this is the Emma lineage release, and it is delicious. All very much a fruit bomb, but the difference I find on this one that she did is it's got a little more pepper zest than the previous lineages.
Okay.
So it's a little spicy for the lineage, but it's still got all the stone fruit and fruit explosions. Hey, if you keep noticing that I'm almost yawning, it's not because you're boring. It's because I just finished teaching 3 days of Magical Worlds at Wizard Academy yesterday, and I am a shell of a human.
Oh, there you go.
Just so you know, but I'm very glad to be here.
I'll just talk a little louder if I see him not enough. Hey, Daniel.
Yeah.
So now there's someone with a story of her journey and how she got to where she's at.
Yeah. Yeah, it was on our campus that she sort of came in, and discovered whiskey for the first time, really. And then went down the whole path of whiskey somm, and then ran the distillery and distilled and did all of our blending. And then stepped in with Balcones and has just been kicking butt over there.
So you guys did the hard work of getting her trained, and then someone came along and stuff.
Yeah, no, we sent her. We launched her. That's what I like to think. I think we gave her a really good platform. But man, she is a rocket. Watch her go.
So that spice note you're picking up, I would say, because I probably had an earlier bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is a very orange character, very on the sweeter side, floral, almost like a lifesaver candy or sherbet, sherbet, like an orange sherbet.
Yeah.
But I could see how it could use to counterbalance the spice.
Yeah.
It could use a little spicy note there.
Yeah, I agree. She really balanced this one well. This is one of my favorite ones. But I've always, everything she makes, I try it and I'm like, son of a bitch. That was perfect. You nail it. Yeah.
Mm. Well, Slanger, brother.
Slanger. Glad to be drinking with you. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That'll do.
So, it'd be interesting to bring her on and ask her, so did you ever think you would be where you're at and doing what you're doing?
Yeah, no.
When you started,
yeah.
And what was her previous thought that what you would be doing, and how whiskey takes you on a whole nother journey.
Oh, yeah.
Life takes you a whole nother journey.
Yeah.
Takes you another direction. And then it's not just the whiskey and all the people you meet along the way, the friends you make, a few enemies, but or frenemies. There's always an asshole in the bunch somewhere.
That's fair.
No names. But so I talk about, I'm about the place, the product, the people, the production methods, and the provenance of where it's from. So in talking about whiskey education, very, very nerdy, very, very geeky.
Yeah, very narrow niche.
So I had gone back to college. I wasn't never planning on being a winemaker. I just wanted to understand wine more by learning production and working in internship with I'm gonna say distilleries. I do that sometimes.
Yeah, mix them. Yeah.
And then I learned about the Wine Spur Educational Trust. It's becoming more well known in the United States now than it was. But at the time, it was mostly a UK British thing.
Right.
And the texts are good. The materials are good. The examination process, it takes a while to get some feedback on it. But I really thought it was really, really, really well done. And then the Court of Master Sommeliers, studied with 3 master sommeliers for 18 weeks. And there is really, I learned my analytical skills more for evaluating a wine.
Right.
Carried over to whiskey, and to be able to deductively analyze things. Right. But when I had asked a master sommelier, have you ever known an advanced or master somm who wasn't working the floor?
Yeah.
Because part of it is, the floor exams, and they said no. And that's I was like, well, I did it for 6 months on weekends, and I was like, no,
I can't go get a job at a restaurant. I got other things to do.
yeah, exactly. So that's when I went back to the WSET, started the diploma, then introducing spirits. And the funny thing is now they removed the spirits part from the diploma. They
really?
their spirits part. It's a whole separate track now.
Oh yeah. Well, because I've done the secondary track. I only took them after they had separated into 2 tracks.
Okay. Yeah, because they moved from and so if I did the WSET diploma, now I never would have gotten into whiskey.
Yeah, because you just chose wine, or would have had to pick spirits only. Yeah,
right.
That's
and
interesting.
Because
I'm on the spirits.
Whiskey some other way.
Yeah.
Life has a way of bringing things into your path.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have happened the way it happens. So there's the WSET, there's the Court of Master Sommeliers, there's the Institute of Masters of Wine, and there's the Court of Master Sommeliers. And when I started getting into whiskey, my first thought was, well, is there anything out there that's sort of parallel in whiskey tracks?
Right.
And started looking around at whiskey schools and so on and so forth.
Right.
And, the whiskey world and the whiskey education, maybe a couple decades in terms of where wine's at, but it's coming along quickly.
Yeah.
And so now there is my brain. Don't tell me. The university. I was thinking Booze Hound. It's not Booze Hound University.
No.
It's Drunkard University. No. It's
New Make Spirit.
What is it?
New Make Spirit. It's a New Make Spirit. Unaged.
Illegal. Oh, it's not White Dog.
No, it's illegal.
Oh, Moonshine.
Yep. Moonshine University. Yeah.
Moonshine University.
Stave and Thief.
Right. And then there's the Edinburgh Whiskey Academy in south of Edinburgh.
Right.
And of course, as most people probably know, there's the Wizard Academy, which didn't start off as a whiskey school.
No, and it still isn't. Wizard Academy is a business school.
Oh, okay.
Whiskey Marketing School is the whiskey school inside of Wizard Academy.
Okay.
Think of it like
okay.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like I think it's Middleton. There's Middleton Distillery.
Yeah.
And they have a little smaller distillery within Middleton, right?
Yep, exactly. They're Method and Madness.
They do Method and Madness.
Yeah.
So is the whiskey school is kind of like that? A school?
Yeah, the whiskey school and Wizard Academy holds around 40 classes a year. Of those 40 classes, only 5 are whiskey.
Okay.
And they're a product of the Whiskey Marketing School, the Whiskey Somm program.
Okay. And it has its own website, which I'll show a picture here in a second. So one of the things we've talked about and wondering where things are going. So the Institute of Masters of Wine sort of gave birth to the Court of Master Sommeliers.
Right.
There was the Guild of Sommeliers.
Right.
I'm going back and belch. Hold on. Okay. So there was the Guild, which is basically, there's probably a Mason's Guild and all these various guilds, various trades.
Which is how all training happened for most of human history.
Oh, yeah.
You apprenticed for years, and that was it. You're part of a group. Maybe you trained under someone. Yeah.
So the Sommeliers Guild, they're like, we need some sort of academic training to better train our people working within our industry. They went to the Institute of Masters of Wine, and they come on the education system, which then gives birth to the court, and then the Court of Master Sommeliers.
Right.
So these are different and separate organizations, but if you start looking at the names on the rosters,
right, there's a lot of overlap. Yeah.
And those who are studying for the Court of Master Sommeliers, the books. So all my whiskey, I have whiskey books here.
Yeah, wine on the other side. You got to keep them separated.
Over there. But the textbooks that studying for the Court of Master Sommeliers, or even a lot of for the WSET, are done by the Institute of Masters of Wine.
Right.
So there is a symbiotic relationship between these organizations.
Right, which makes sense. Right.
And some are profit, some are nonprofit, and they work together. There's a Jeff Libitska, who's a master of wine and a friend of mine. He actually does little seminars and tasting events for people training for the Court of Master Sommeliers to take exams.
That's helpful.
Yeah, so he provides wines, and then he gives a little plug for the wine. He's actually the
Right.
winery he's representing, and then so that when they go into the business, they're bringing his
right
onto the shelf.
But still super. That's I mean, that's a public service right there.
Oh yeah, because it's very challenging to prepare for exams and pay for these things. So he hosts these events, and Master Sommeliers will show up and stuff. So one of the things that is coming along, and talking to the viewers here, is there's something similar like this coming along, similarly, very close to this coming along in the whiskey world.
Yeah.
Which you guys are a part of.
Yeah. We, me and Colin Blake at Moonshine University, the Stave and Thief program, and Christy and Ian from Edinburgh, from EWA, the Edinburgh Whiskey Academy. We've been talking for a couple of years now and trying to figure out how to start tying things together. They've all already been doing that sort of thing. So EWA already has people doing off-site certified things, like one-offs here and there. No one's allowed to do their diploma program except for them personally yet.
Okay.
But then Stave and Thief, Moonshine guys, a bunch of people have already been doing the lower level certified bourbon stewards out in the world as like their own ventures.
Okay.
But we became the first. Basically, here's what I wanted. This is the point. The point is, what I wanted is for all of the whiskey education programs that we respected to all be talking to each other and working together, because none of us are doing the same thing.
Right.
We really aren't. I mean, the overlap is only in facts. We all talk about facts to some degree. The facts of production or the facts of whiskey history. And we all have to cover that at some level. But after that, everyone's doing something totally unique and kind of a different accent. And I love that. And I really wanted us all to be viewing each other as peers in a community. And because what you find is, or what I found was, every time I called and talked to them and got to know them, everyone had the same internal drive, which was they passionately care about teaching and education. There were no real egos in the group. There's a lot of graciousness and general open hands with knowledge, and just really wanting to see the general understanding of whiskey grow in the world. And I find that everywhere I turn in what I consider to be legitimate education programs, is you don't find a lot of egos. You find a lot of people going like, we just want to see the word spread, and we want it to be good and quality and last and have an impact and make a difference in people's lives. And so we, Wizard Academy, because we're one of the only ones with a true campus.
Right.
I wanted us to be able to be sort of a South United States, southern part of United States home base for all of the various whiskey education programs that we really believe in, whether we made them up or not. And we're doing that now. So for the first time ever, and you're going to be a part of this in May, we're doing the Edinburgh Whiskey Scotch certification at Austin at Wizard Academy, and we're doing the Stave and Thief Bourbon Steward, Executive Bourbon Steward at Wizard Academy. Hey, there you go.
So here's a picture I snapped of the website. There's a link in the description down below.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody, if you're interested, check this out. There's just a little snapshot of it. My recommendation would be, and one of the advantages of, obviously, if you're going to go, so Moonshine University is in Kentucky, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Louisville.
So
right in downtown.
So there are some classes there that they teach that you don't teach. One
was a lot.
The center analysis class. Although, of course, their mindset is all our students are going into production.
Yeah, no, they are heavily aimed at industry education, distillery owners, production,
Right. And that was similar to when I was studying enology and winemaking. Is the mindset, because of the school I went to, Las Positas in Livermore. They have their own vineyards. So it's a viticulture and enology So
Right.
you can do a viticultural track, you can do
Right.
a technology track, but you can also kind of combine them. So you can have some hands-on experience with that particular vineyard as
Right.
well as there's probably 60 wineries in the Livermore Valley
Right.
and so forth.
Right.
So that's what they're sort of geared towards. Whereas the Wizard Academy being marketing,
Mhm.
and we discussed this in another video, is
Yeah.
really about understanding people, understand and how to communicate,
Yeah.
and how to engage and
Yeah.
engage people.
Now you have to have facts and you have to have information. Because my favorite quote ever happened recently from one of our Psalms. Did you see this Souders quote in the Whiskey Psalm Facebook group? So Jason Souter the other day was teaching, and he was teaching level 1, the nerd section, like all of the really nerdy
Okay.
production and stills and yeast and fermentations. And he walked up and he said, "Look, if you don't know the stuff that I'm about to teach you, then he said, if all you do at tastings is talk about what I'm about to teach you, then you're just a shitty Wikipedia. But if you don't know what I'm about to teach you, then you are a useless sommelier."
Right.
And I was like, that is the best analysis of where the knowledge is valuable that I've ever heard, which is like, you have to know your shit or you're a worthless guide. But if all you do is talk about that, then you're just a shitty Wikipedia. And people can Google those things.
Yeah. So, and what happens is a lot of information becomes runoff.
Mm-hmm.
It slides right off.
Yep.
And people aren't going to stick around.
Yeah.
Or in the YouTube world, they're just going to click off and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, that's probably my challenge is, how do you keep people engaged? How do you engage with them? How do you keep them wanting to watch? How to keep them, and
that's tough.
Maybe it's infotainment or whatever, how to keep them engaged and telling our story, telling the story of whiskey, not just dry stats. Well, they ferment to this percentage, and then they
right.
And they did that, and the angle of the line arm is at this amount of degrees, and they run it at this many. Okay.
Right. Okay.
There are a few who like that kind of a thing.
Yeah, but they won't be enough to get their own table at a restaurant.
But most people tend to tune out because it's not engaging.
Well, and honestly, man, I'm a distiller and a blender, and when I hang out in rooms full of other distillers and blenders, it's often that we talk about anything else that we can think of.
Yeah,
because we're just all day long. That's all we do. So it's like we get together and we'll talk about music.
right?
Or we'll talk about travel, or we'll talk about movies, or we'll talk about books, just anything but yeast and fermentations.
I don't shop right now.
Yeah.
So where do you think? So I look back as to where things have been, where things are coming along, but then the future where we're going. So these extra classes, in case people didn't catch it.
Yeah.
Edinburgh Whiskey Academy classes are now going to be offered at the Wizard Academy.
Yeah, in Austin, Texas.
Yeah,
other Scotland. That's what
in Edinburgh.
That's what we're known as. Yeah.
Scotland. So, so I would say though, don't just go there for the class. I should have downloaded a picture, make it available. There are distilleries in the area you gotta go check out.
Yeah, the Texas Whiskey Trail map. Yeah, there's plenty in the area.
Heinemann Green, Andalusia, who just lost to you guys in the competition. You could.
Sorry.
Garrison Brothers.
Yep.
Not too far away. There's
Real Spirits. Yeah.
And maybe even be able to have to do a little tour with them or to engage with them and learn about how Texas is doing things there. So you can make it a destination.
Yeah.
Rather than to do other things. This is there for a couple of days at the Wizard Academy, but then also visit distilleries.
Yeah.
and do other things in the area as well.
Yeah.
So where do you think maybe, I mean, and this is just speculation.
Yeah.
What do you think the trajectory of this is going? Because what I think needs or happened is, I mean, originally a lot of the training historically is people were already in the industry and they
Right.
need to be trained to do their industry thing better. So the Edinburgh Whiskey Academy, if
Right.
you're working at a distillery there in Scotland, and you're going to be engaging, there's somewhere around 40,000 people who work directly or in support of the Scotch whiskey industry.
Right.
One of the biggest reasons for tourism, and
Yep.
now that we're coming on post-COVID,
Right.
this is going to increase. I'm going back in July to
Right.
Scotland, and plan to go back 2024. So to be able to engage with people who are spending out money, Diageo just spent a huge mint redoing all their visitor centers.
Yes, they did.
So now all the Diageo distilleries, Kalila, Glenkinchie, Cardew, and others have. So the idea is, hey, engaging with people is important. Therefore, you're going to need an educated personnel who can communicate
Right.
well and not just drop a lot of facts about
Right.
whiskey and how to pour whiskey and how to serve whiskey and so forth. So where do you think, you got any ideas of where you think maybe this is going to continue to go, or where we can reach out to people and say, hey, this is going to benefit you and what
Right.
you do?
I don't, man, that's a hard one because I still I'm still not certain that we've seen what makes each of our schools most valuable yet, or even if it is. I mean, I believe it is, but like from my perspective right now, where I'm standing, I think all programs are only going to be judged by your fruit. You shall know them. All of your programs are going to be judged by what your people do with it. And this is true of all certification programs, period, which is if your people take what they've learned and they become known in the industry for, oh, you got one of those, you are going to be a badass employee. And there's a lot we don't have to train you, right? And you're already seeing that happen for Moonshine and Stave and Thief program, is that like all the distilleries in Kentucky are regularly sending like 15 employees to their programs. And so they come back and it's basically replaced their company training programs.
Right.
And you see a similar thing with EWA, which is EWA will regularly get, the Edinburgh Whiskey Academy will regularly get, distillery staff and industry staff. And it's sort of like, well, instead of us building our own training program, let's just send our people there. It's already been built.
Right.
And that's fine for education. I would really love to see the whiskey marketing school, and we already do, but it's mostly self-motivated.
Right.
The whiskey marketing school doesn't really have big brands, but sending people down to us to learn how to market and communicate, because that's not how marketing education works. And that's by big brands. Big brands don't think of marketing that way. They think of it as this other little weird unicorn that you just go find somebody who's really magical and you fire people until you get the magical guy. But they don't think of it as something you teach and train. Right. Whereas like knowledge and information, they think about that totally differently.
Right.
And so I think at some point that will begin to shift. But the reality is every program is, if all it does is give you some initials to add, and then, but the industry doesn't see a direct one-to-one change in the level of person they hire being here instead of here at the things that they need, it doesn't really matter in the long run. It's just a vanity project for the people who take it at that point. And so I really hope that we're not one of those. But I'll tell you the one thing, if I can like indulge talking about something that we actually just built and I'm excited about, is we just developed this new education program called the Bonafide Whiskey Enthusiast.
Bona fide.
Yeah. And it's online and it's video and it's self-paced, and you take it and you take a test, and then if you pass, then you're bona fide. Yeah, there's that top deal. And it's a fundamental training on the basics of whiskey production and the basics of whiskey and all the dominant whiskey producing categories, and ends with a training on how to do tastings with your friends, right? And so But that one is aimed. Here's why that one matters, and I think no one else is doing this, and I hope it works. That program is aimed at non-industry people who just want to know more about what they're drinking. Basically, the thing that got you started in wine, right? It's if that first little hurdle of like, oh, I've discovered I really like whiskey, but I don't understand it entirely. What is the difference between all these things? That's what this is for. It's for the people who want to spend just a small amount of money. They want to pace it themselves, and they never plan on working in the whiskey industry or the spirits industry or the beverage industry. They just want to be a more intelligent drinker and purchaser and have more fun moments with friends drinking things.
Right.
And so we built that. When you pass it, you get this metal business card that weighs like a half a pound.
There you go.
Yeah, this thing is a beast. It's like it's like sheet metal. It's insane. But yeah, it's just to us, it makes us laugh. Are you bona fide? I think our tagline that made us all start laughing when we came up with it was, it's not a certification, it's a bonification.
There you go. Now, if you do the level two, you get a tattoo on you.
Yeah. No, there's no other levels. There's only one. There's only one. Just one thing. It's bona fide or not bona fide. But actually, here's what I like about the Wine Som program that I've seen happen. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it feels like it's happened because of the people, but not because of the program. And I would love to see this replicated in the whiskey marketing programs of all kinds, moonshine, us, EWA, on purpose instead of accidental, which is the biggest value of the Wine Som program was that it threw you into this community of other passionate people. And so sure, maybe you got to add some initials to your name, and sure, maybe you got some good training, but what you also got surrounded with was really amazing humans, all in line with the same passions and all helping each other out and all able to call each other and ask questions and to support each other. And so when we built the Whiskey Marketing School, that was our number one goal, was to build our graduates have this really strong community. And so I think that's where the real value is. If all of the whiskey education programs can focus half their energy on their graduates.
Next thing you get a phone call, hey, do you know what causes trimethylhydronaphthalene in a whiskey?
Yes, that's literally what happens. That's literally, I mean, it's amazing. And you will find this community with distillers. I'm a part of 2 different groups who meet once a month on Zoom.
Right.
And it's one is like 8 of us, and one is about a dozen of us. And we literally just pick a random nerd topic and we just get on Zoom and discuss it and joke and talk shit and give each other advice and take photos of our still set up and go, oh, try this, change that setting to this setting. It solved all of that for us. And so you already have that community in the distillers and the makers community. But I can't wait to see it that elaborate in the education community.
So
we're getting a lot of really interesting questions. Have you seen these? I've seen them pop up, but I didn't want to interrupt anything to just answer them. But there's the funny conversations going on.
The chat for StreamYard doesn't light up when someone puts my name, and I don't have the YouTube chat up.
Oh yeah,
I apologize to everyone watching, and I have to lean forward.
To read it. You want me to read some interesting ones,
or at least some names?
Okay, so like Top Shelf Dustin just posted a bunch of shit with Christopher Malloy. But most marketing with in-person people at sales. Yeah, that's right. Actually, Dustin, I don't know that you meant this, but I would argue that most large companies, they only train salespeople because they think that's their marketing. And no, Malloy, there's never in a million years is Diageo ever going to want us. We have no marketability outside of personality-driven stuff. There's no way. There's no upsell for Diageo to own Crowded Barrel. There's no reason.
Is there a chapter of Skull and Bones?
No. Why would you ask that, Christopher? Why? Did you hear something?
We can't talk about that. Uncle Fan Club.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
There's some really great comments on there. Let's see. There was something that happened really early on. Oh, top shelf facts are useful in education. It's really basically the entire chat is now a conversation between Dustin and Christopher.
It's not. There's a difference between facts and then how you convey the information. And I'll give you an example. So most people know, I graduated from a couple of different seminaries, I got a doctorate degree, and I would spend time at a pulpit. And I remember, and it was a pastor's wife who said this. Eric,
of course,
you don't have to tell the congregation everything you learned at the seminary. Yeah, and she was a PK. She was a PK. She grew up in the church, And it was her way of saying, Eric, I know you're a theological nerd, but the people don't need to hear about the tenses and verbs of the Greek. Could be translated this way or that way into English, and so on and so on. You're losing them.
Yeah.
So there's the facts and the information, and actually we covered this I put the link to our previous discussion.
Yeah.
There's the context and ways conveyed in the context of
and I mean Dustin's false-based education that's a fun little play on words. But just Dustin, if you're worried about it, I don't know of a single education program in whiskey, whether I think it's valuable or not, that's lying about anything.
That's because I haven't started mine yet.
Well, there will soon be one.
Erik Wade bullshit school. Get a BS.
Eric's BS. BS degree.
So there's the context. And so I would say from a personal perspective, and I in our previous discussion when I was in Austin is my tendency is a lot of data and a lot of facts and syllogisms and to try to argue someone into something.
Yeah.
It's always a work in progress. This will continue to be a work in progress. Right now, because I'm studying for an exam, my videos are facts, dates, and timeline.
Because that's how you pass exams.
Yes. But eventually, my channel will evolve, and I'm still figuring out how I'm going to do it and how I want to do it. But my hope is it will evolve and become much more of a storytelling.
Can I put in a request?
And dates, right? So one of the reasons why you have so many different denominations is because the Bible isn't a textbook. It is not a systematic theology. Right. It's stories and poems and allegory and metaphors. Yep. It's drama. It's if you want to use the term myth, some people call them whatever to convey to get tragedy and trials, and that's very different than I don't know, Socrates or Immanuel Kant or something. So it's a very different way of talking. And eventually, my goal is I will become a better storyteller, better communicator, which people will go, oh, I really enjoyed that. And I learned from that.
Yeah. So here's what my request. If I can put in a request for the future of the Erik Wade channel, am I allowed to do that?
What?
Am I?
Okay.
Yeah. You ready?
Yeah.
I would love to see you do an entire series where all you do is interview people about their whiskey story. But you keep them all on story, but your knowledge of production and history and distilleries should help you ask more interesting questions. Okay, so for example, one of the really badass podcasts that I love listening to is a songwriters podcast run by Joe Pug. And Joe Pug is a really amazing singer-songwriter here in the US. And he interviews Foy Vance and like Steve Earle and all these really famous, like Emmylou Harris, all these really famous musicians, right? But he's a professional songwriter and a professional musician. And so when he interviews all these other musicians and songwriters, the questions that he asks are very insightful and very inside baseball. And you get all of these because all the DJs just ask things like, where are your influences? And why do you like guitar? And what made you choose country music? And, you know, it's like, whereas Joe Pug will ask really insightful inside questions that just prod them to tell more of their story. I think if you used everything in your head that you know to draw out the stories of really interesting whiskey people, I would watch that all day long.
It's an insider versus outsider interaction.
Yeah.
Outsider interviewing or quizzing an insider versus an in-house discussion, someone who understands and knows where to poke or where to peek into and draw information out.
That's where all that head knowledge would pay off in spades.
Yeah. And it's something, but something I'm gonna have to learn to grow into and learn more. But I do always, when I meet people, so there was a Scotch Malt Whiskey Society event in San Jose, and I started meeting people, and it's really weird. Are you Erik Waite? That's very weird.
Yeah.
It feels strange to get recognized in public. But one of the first things I asked them is, so how'd you get into whiskey?
Right.
And this is not just, a question to just throw at them. I'm really interested. And it's into stories of people's stories and the journey they took and how they ended up at.
Yeah.
You meet people, I went to school, I was going to become a lawyer, and I started studying law, but to pay the bills, I was working at a restaurant or a bar.
Yeah. And then I got more interested.
And I got tired of this law bullshit. Next thing you know, they're making whiskey or they're becoming a sommelier, working in restaurants. But that's, they bumped into it while they thought they were going to go and do something else.
You ever watch, this is random, but you ever watch Hot Ones, that YouTube channel Hot Ones? Where the guy makes everybody eat hot wings while he interviews.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Gordon Ramsay. That's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah. Okay. That guy might be currently one of the best interviewers alive.
Yeah.
If you can, but look at how he asks his questions. They're always such a deep uncovery of some random obscure thing that he picked up on in their history. And they're like, whoa, how did you find out about that? Like, how did you even know that I won that award in high school? Like what, and you got all of these things. That would be, study that one and take Erik Waite's approach to that on like, hey, you started at this distillery and I happen to know that they do blah, 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 blah.
Meanwhile, they're going to Dante's Inferno as they're eating this stuff, and the sweat is pouring out of it. The sweat is pouring out of it.
I love it.
And they start dropping F-bombs everywhere.
Yeah, I love it. Malloy asked if I was surprised how fast our channel blew up. And at the risk of sounding whatever, no. And it's not because I don't respect Horst and Ralphie. I really do. And it is amazing and yeah, right, that's Horst. It's amazing and admirable to me the level of content they put out and the quantity of content that they consistently put out. They are just relentlessly there, and that is amazing. But Christopher, I teach marketing and communications and brand building, and so no, we built the channel specifically to show what was possible if you apply what we teach.
Right.
And so it was not. Was it luck? Yeah, it's partially luck, and yeah, it was partially right place, right time. And no, it wasn't 100% skill. There was a shit ton of X factors. It could have gone wrong and still could go wrong at any minute. It could have gone wrong in 100 different ways, and we barely avoided. But everything we did was on purpose and very intentional. And so when it did work, it was like, okay, good. No, now let's do the next thing. And then grew more. And then we intentionally went, now we do the next thing. So our YouTube channel was a business plan, like a written down business plan. And we simply executed it.
So to add two things to that is understanding the platform and the audience.
And the people. Yeah.
The people. The people and the platform. Throwing some more P's in there.
Yep. That's it.
People and the platform.
Yeah.
Which is different than someone who understands whiskey or wine or whatever the thing is. And I'll just sit in front of a camera and do my thing.
Right.
versus understanding the nature of the platform. It's one of the biggest challenges of being a whiskey tuber is because, and particularly since the platform is constantly evolving and changing.
Right.
And the behind the scenes stuff, where's that button I'm supposed to push? They moved it. Where the heck did they put that?
Yeah.
Where first off, you could only do 10-minute videos. Now you can do 8-hour live streams.
Yep.
It changed a lot. And also understanding is, so, okay, this is literally my 99.4% of my audience is male.
Yeah.
And between the ages of 35 and 45.
That's real.
Okay. I know who I know who my audience is.
Yeah, you do.
So in a similar fashion, if you, yes, understanding whiskey or underwater basket weaving or anything else you're talking about.
That's fine.
Okay?
But
But then understanding the platform and the people and how to commit and how to reach to them.
Yeah.
And how to mold and shape the message and how you're going to message in order to engage. And then, as you mentioned before, and this is probably 50%, if not more, is building a community.
Yeah, you name people, you make them seen,
Yeah.
you call them out, you talk
It's
to them.
community.
That's what made us. Our own unique brilliance was not what made our channel. What made our channel is we saw people, we named them, we called them out, we honored them, and we made the channel about more than just the two of us fucking around on camera.
Right.
And yes, Dustin, the random thumbnails, 100% calculated.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
Every single fucking one. And sometimes it was a test to see what would happen. Right. But if we kept doing it, it's because it worked. And if we quit doing it, it's because that test didn't work. But it was all done on purpose.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And there are YouTube channels you can watch. You can learn all that stuff from.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Batal.
Yeah. And Rex is the one who knows the YouTube platform, not me. I know the camera and the people.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about this whiskey because I know we've been talking about all that.
Yeah, do it because I've got a little bit and then I actually have to bail.
And we're over an hour. So
yeah. Tell me about your whiskey. What are you drinking?
This is an even 50-50 expression of the bourbon cask and the sherry cask. Oh. You can have a bourbon cask in which it plays the base and stage for then adding on sherry, and the sherry is the dominant expression. Or you could have where the sherry just adds a little bit of a note to it on the back end. This is an even 50-50 expression of the sherry, at least on the palate, even if it's not in the amount of time spent in the cask. So it's a good, even balanced, a 50-50 expression of sherry and bourbon. And I just did a video on the Auchentoshan 12-year-old, which is a little lower in ABV. This is at 48. That's at 40. But the other thing I noticed is they both have a similar expression of bourbon and sherry cask, but that's triple distilled, lighter in spirit. This has more mouthfeel to it, a little bit more weight to it, also a little more weight because of the alcohol level. Right. But in terms of aromas and flavors, apart from structure, it's similar in terms of the bourbon and sherry expression. We had to put some whiskey in there into the conversation.
Yeah, what is the proof on what you're drinking?
This is at 48, which is not normal for Dalwhinnie, but it's a special distillery.
Okay. Yeah, because the lineage that I'm doing, this is 47.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. So anyhow, Daniel, I want to thank you for coming on again.
Yeah, thank you.
Schools,
always a pleasure.
In the description. And as always, it's great to meet up, and I'll see you in May.
Yeah, only a few months out.
Yeah. So, all right. Thanks, brother, for coming on, and thank you everyone for watching. If anybody has any comments or questions, watching on the replay, put them down below, and I'll see that you get a response.
Cheers, guys. It was a pleasure.
Cheers. Everybody have a great weekend. Cheers.